Good evening. I was smart enough to prepare a speech in advance, so kindly bear with me. Please pardon me for preparing this speech for this evening. I usually prefer to stay away from on-stage appearances and spend time writing in my own den. Although today, I would certainly try to keep it crisp and not let you fall asleep. Politics nowadays is often seen close to the word dirty or untouchable. We are mistaken here. Till we shed this attitude of looking towards politics with a certain predefined prism, we cannot change the emerging political discourse in our country. A discourse which has corruption at its very root. The question we face now is how to cut the roots of this poison spreading all across the nation, even in this modern age. Do we wait and watch, as most of us tend to conclude, or do we try to be aware and raise our finger at every small act of unethical behavior or corruption? Politics isn't bad. Politics was never bad. What about politicians? Yes, we do have people in politics with sectarian agenda playing to the vote banks, but it is we who elect them. So does the simple solution lie in being apolitical? Being apolitical is often mistaken with having no opinion at all on the way things take shape around us. Apolitical vaguely means having no interest in politics. I'm sure most of the people sitting here in this hall are apolitical by that definition. Even I, for that matter, would classify myself as being apolitical. I'm a political commentator, but without any interest or deep interest in politics. Perhaps circumstances led me to this pedestal in life. It will be easier for you to understand the term apolitical with few examples from my own life. Friends, I took birth a little more than 2 decades ago, and there have been 3 attempts to silence me, or perhaps to murder me. Strangely, on all 3 occasions, it was due to my staunch apolitical nature. Although close friends often tease me, they call me a communist among the rightist. I belong to a micro-minority of Kashmiri Pandits who are today thrown all across the world, all thanks to terrorism. No, not just that. Thanks to our apolitical neutral nature too. The liberals have a million reasons to justify our selective killings. Kashmiri Pandits were supposed to be used for experimentation purpose for a political science practical test conducted by the ISI as part of their pan-Islamist onslaught. That is why, coinciding with our exodus, a man called Ghulam Nabi Fai was illegally sponsored by Pakistan to campaign against India at the Capitol Hill. I do not think Americans could have been fooled for all these 25 years, not even the Indian intelligence. Here in India, we do not have the moral courage to act against Arundhati Roy, Syed Ali Shah Gilani, and Gautam Navlakhas of the world for inciting violence against democracy and its institutions. We in fact have our own very government-backed Kashmir interlocutors who defend the right of those who speak the language of secession and dissent. For those who believe in insaniyat or humanity and secular ethos, there is no space in Kashmir of today, not even in the eyes of the so-called broad-minded Kashmir interlocutors. Yes, Kashmir is as complicated, my friends. You all must have guessed it right. The current Indian political regime in power has no interest to close the separatist shops in Kashmir. The Intelligence Bureau wants to keep them engaged against each other. They do not want to bring the much-needed change in the emerging hate politics of Kashmir. The pertinent question, my dear friends, remains, are we all interested in this much-needed change? We recently celebrated the Home Ministry decision to reject mercy petition of Parliament House attacker Mohammad Afzal. This decision was taken after government sat over the file for several years. In this sudden outburst of celebration, we have forgotten mass murderer called Yasin Malik of Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front, who today portrays himself as the most liberal-minded citizen. The CBI has been sitting over the case of murder and kidnapping against him in the Tara court of Jammu for more than 22 years now. Perhaps we need another Anna Hazare to shake the pillars of the police machinery. Friends, my own encounter with politics was accidental. I was a 16-year-old when I was emotionally disturbed to read about the injustice in the Jessica Lal and the Priyadarshini Mattu murder cases. It led me to initiate an online campaign which soon took to the streets. Such brutal cases of murder, which were pending with the judiciary for years, was solved with. This was another time when I faced a threat. Looking back now, I realize I never thought of my family at that point of time. It wasn't merely a threat on me, perhaps even my loved ones. My campaigns on Kashmir exposing separatist propaganda of hate haven't gone too well with them either. I have faced the brunt of the same. I face a threat to my life from separatists and their men who were politicians and even journalists. I recently was invited to the India Today conclave to put a counter perspective to the separatist hawk Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani. Soon after the event, indirect threats through different mediums started coming. My letters informing the same to the Home Minister haven't gone unanswered. The innocent-looking Home Minister has reasons to delay it every time. So please don't be surprised if I become a victim of my blunt language. I don't expect flowers to be showered over my dead body, not before I settle my differences with the Almighty who is responsible for my lost childhood. My dear friends, one of the most recent examples of intolerance towards a political approach was faced by both my fellow panelist here, Chetan Bhagat, and me. We had planned to participate in the much talked about Harud Literature Festival in Kashmir. Expected to be one of the biggest literature events in the troubled state, it was being initiated by the organizers of the Jaipur Literature Festival. The apolitical tone of the theme didn't play too well with the separatists in Kashmir, who threatened to pelt stones if the event was not called off. Soon, even writers such as Basharat Peer joined the separatist bandwagon, campaigning against the event. Chetan Bhagat was targeted for being an Indian and a much popular writer. I was targeted for being a supporter of freedom of speech. They couldn't perhaps bear this coming from a person of Kashmiri origin. I would just talk a little about corruption. Maybe everybody has talked about financial corruption, but I think the biggest challenge we face is moral corruption. If our Home Minister P. Chidambaram is being accused of fraud in this election win from Tamil Nadu, why doesn't he come out and open it, proving if it is really innocent? Our politicians, on the other hand, do not want to retire from politics. They want to enter the grave or perhaps enter the cremation ground, sitting on the chair of the political bar. We need stringent reforms to reduce the number of times a person can contest elections. I'll conclude my thoughts with a short story. Kashmir has been a distant dream. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Kashmir because it's very close to my heart. Kashmir has been a distant dream for me personally. I was fortunate to have taken birth in my ancestral house at Rainawari. Soon after we met the forced exodus, the Kalshiknaus rode for every Pandit on the streets of Kashmir. In July 1995, Doordarshan, the national television of India, aired a documentary on rare paintings of Sachanda Bhairava my great-grandfather Master Sergeant Kaul had collected. The following day, our Srinagar house was set ablaze by Islamist revolutionaries of Azadi. A part of my heart has been paralyzed since that moment. I yearn to return one day, never though as a tourist. I sometimes tend to hate politics at times for the reason that the politics of India didn't arise for my community of few lakhs who met the forced exodus or ethnic cleansing. Media or even our politicians go an extra mile to talk about the Gujarat riots, but selective targeting of minorities for being apolitical in Kashmir never ever figures in their address, not even the Sikh riots in 1994. But to hate politics isn't a solution. To see a better governance, we need to bring a change to our political discourse. By we, I mean you, the youth. Don't wait for an Anna Hazare to emerge. Be your own Anna Hazare. Launch your own crusade against wrong, against injustice, against discrimination. And lastly, and even if after that world remains silent, I would say, फैलेगा फैलेगा हमारा मौन समुद्र के पानी में नमक की तरह नसों में खून सा दौड़ता हुआ फैलेगा फैलेगा हमारा मौन.